Most people look for the meaning of life in things they can touch. In money, in the walls of their own home, in a career. But ever since I was a kid, I knew the true essence was hidden between the lines. In that place where the voice ends and the silence begins. I grew up in a town where the bells of our old church were the main metronome of life. My family was religious but not fanatical. My father and mother went to Mass on Sundays and observed the major holidays, but for them it was more of a tradition than a way of breathing. My older sister often joked that I was born in the wrong era, because while she dreamed of new dresses and dances, I would sit for hours in the garden, immersed in texts that would make most teenagers' jaws ache from boredom. For me, it wasn't an obligation. It was a fascination, a passion that burned me from the inside out. I remember my first real fast. I was 12. My mother was worried, trying to slip me a piece of cheese or turkey, but I felt a strange lightness. It was as if the less food there was in my stomach, the more room remained for something higher. I didn't just read the Bible, I lived in it. I knew the Psalms by heart, and they weren't just dry words to me. They were the music of my soul. When my peers ran off to play soccer after school, I went to Father Andrew. We would discuss the nuances of canon law for hours. I saw how the world around me was drowning in vanity, in petty grudges, and the pursuit of phantom happiness. And I decided I would be the one to bring them light. It wasn't just a choice, it was my mission. After high school, the question of where to go never even came up. The seminary. There, I became something of a phenomenon. My mentors said they hadn't seen such passion in decades. When it was my turn to give a homily or simply share stories from the scriptures, the hall would go so quiet you could hear hearts beating. I didn't just retell stories. I spoke of David as if I had seen his fear of Goliath myself. I read the Psalms as if every word were my own confession. People who came to our training services wept. They said that in my voice, they heard the hope they were so desperately missing in their daily lives. "You have a great future, son," the rector of the seminary told me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "God gave you the gift of speaking to human hearts. Don't let it go to waste." I believed him. I believed in myself. I was certain my path was paved with the golden bricks of righteousness, and nothing could knock me off it. I was ready to give all of myself to service, never suspecting that the real trials weren't waiting in the halls of the seminary, but out there, where faith collides with the brutal, unwashed reality of life. If the first part of my life was an ascent toward the light, the second became a rapid plunge into the abyss. They say God tests those he loves most. But is there a limit to this test? My older sister, Jane, was my anchor. While I was floating in the clouds of theology, she was teaching elementary school, wiping noses, and believing in goodness as simply and naturally as she breathed. She was the moral compass I looked to whenever I doubted. The only thing that clouded her life was years of futile hopes for a child. She and her husband went through every circle of medical hell, prayer, and waiting. And then, a miracle happened. Just as I finally took my vows and became a priest, Jane had a son, little Mark. I remember the day of his baptism as clearly as if it were yesterday. The heavy gold of my vestments, the scent of incense, and the warm weight of the infant in my arms. I dipped him into the font and felt that, in that moment, heaven was smiling on our family. I baptized my own nephew. I promised God to protect this soul. And 3 months later, heaven vanished. It was a night of dry lightning. One of those strange nights when the air crackles with electricity but there is no rain. A lightning strike hit the roof of their old wooden house directly. A gas line running nearby turned the home into a giant torch in seconds. They didn't even have time to wake up. Jane, her husband, and baby Mark. They burned alive, turning to ash along with their dreams. I stood by 3 caskets. 2 were closed and the third was very small. My hands, which had recently held the Holy Scriptures, were trembling so hard I couldn't hold the aspergillum. I was supposed to read the prayers for the departed, but the words stuck in my throat like red-hot coals. My father couldn't take it. His heart, already worn out by years of hard work, simply stopped right there at the cemetery as the last handful of earth was thrown onto Anna's casket. He collapsed onto his own daughter's fresh grave and never got up again. In 1 week, I buried my family, my compass, my future, my mother. She didn't die physically, but only a shell remained. She almost stopped speaking, her eyes clouded by the film of endless grief. Now she needed constant care like a child. I would go to the church, look at the crucifix, and feel nothing but a hollow, black rage. Where was this higher justice? Why did the lightning hit the house of a teacher who taught children about love, and not a den of criminals? Why did God take an infant I had just placed under his protection? My mentors at the seminary told me about God's mysterious ways. But to me, those ways were now drenched in blood and covered in the ashes of my loved ones. My sermons, which used to inspire thousands, became dry and bitter. I no longer saw the light. I saw only the void under the dome, which remained silent in response to my scream. After the funerals, time stopped flowing. It turned into a stagnant swamp. I continued to wear the collar. I continued to go out to the people, but every step toward the altar felt like a betrayal. A betrayal of Jane's memory. A betrayal of baby Mark, whose skin still smelled of milk when he fell asleep in my arms. The senior priests saw my state. They called me in for long talks. "This is a trial, my son," the rector said, gently fingering his rosary. Job lost everything too. His children, his property, his health. But he did not renounce. The Lord is testing your faith, tempering it like steel in a fire, so that you may become an even stronger shepherd. I looked at his clean, calm hands and felt something black and hot boiling inside me. Testing my faith? My voice trembled. My faith has been strong since I was 12. I never doubted a single word of the scriptures. If making my faith even stronger required incinerating a sister who was the embodiment of kindness, and killing an infant who hadn't even realized he existed, then the price of this test is too high. I asked him, what father would kill his own grandchildren to test the loyalty of his son? We would call that madness or cruelty. Why then, when God does it, do we call it love? The mentor went silent. He had no answer other than the standard quotes. That night, I entered the empty church for the last time. The light from the candles danced on the faces of the saints, and they seemed like strangers to me, made of stone. I took off my pectoral cross. I laid it on the altar. If this is who you are, I whispered into the void under the dome, then I don't want to be your soldier. You don't need my faith, you need my submission through terror. And I cannot submit to the one who destroyed my world for a lesson. The next day, I left the priesthood. It was a scandal. To the town, I became an apostate, a Judas. But I didn't care. I traded the black cassock for ordinary jeans and a shirt, gave up my rented apartment, and moved my mother to a small house on the outskirts where no one knew us. Secular life turned out to be strange. I went to work in social services, helping those who had lost everything just like me, without sermons, without quoting psalms, simply holding their hands through real, non-fictional grief. When I feed my mother with a spoon or change her linens, I feel more divine than I ever felt in all my years at the seminary. There are no icons in my house, but sometimes, when the sun sets behind the horizon, I look at the sky. I don't know if I did the right thing. Perhaps I really did fail the test. Perhaps I am just a weak man who couldn't bear the weight of God's plan. But if God truly is love, He will understand my pain. And if He is only a cold lightning bolt striking at random, then I have even less to regret. They say God moves in mysterious ways. Maybe. But now I am looking for my own path on this earth, among people, where mercy doesn't need the death of the innocent as an excuse. I look at my mother. Sometimes she recognizes me and gives a faint, fleeting smile. In those moments, I think that maybe true service isn't words spoken under a dome, but a quiet presence beside someone who is suffering. I don't know if we will all meet there, beyond the veil. But here, right now, I choose to be human, even if it means being alone in my unbelief.